Biblionauts, how are you doing? I'm very well, a bit tired, coming back from a long journey from ancient Rome to here, to the present, because I was reading the Memoirs of Adrian by Marguerite Yourcenar, je ne sais pas, je ne parle français, pardon, with a translation from Julio Cortázar, which is an amazing writer. If you don't know him, he's actually, I believe him to be one of the writers with like the most discernible personality on the page that I have ever read. And because of that, I never believed him capable of doing translating. But I do think, without having read more from Marguerite Yourcenar, except for extracts, I do think that he's probably improved this book, because it really suits his style. It really suits the way he writes and everything. And I could, without losing Yourcenar's voice at all, I really could also sense him as a translator. And that made this experience so much more interesting. But yeah, this is the Memoirs of Hadrian. I'm not going to talk about this book. This is actually a video about annotations. But I'm going to use this book as a model because it's the most recent read I did. And you will have time to hear me talk plenty about it when I make my Best of 2024 video, which should be coming soon whenever I get back to the North of Spain and I actually can get a hold on my books and I can actually show them to you, because I like having something tangible to show you when I'm recommending books. So yeah, that's that about the book. Now, why another video on annotating? I think there's like a billion. But that's because I was watching BookTube. Actually, I was watching BookTube videos about this book because I just finished it, and I sort of like on the queue a video from To Readers in My Concern that I watched a while ago played, and it reminded me of how good that video is. To Readers in My Concern is like one of my very favorite BookTube channels. I will link his channel in the description. I don't think that anybody here will not know his channel, but if you don't, definitely check it out. And I think that a while ago he made what to me is the closest that any channel has come to making a definitive video on annotating. Not to discourage anyone to make more videos about this subject. It's very, very interesting, but he almost mentioned everything that I do personally and that I agree with when it comes to annotating. And because of that, I hold it with a higher value than any other video, including my own, on this subject. I watched the video through, and at the end there's this section of sort of like he was talking about his evolution as a reader from the more obvious points, which I will not touch on here. I'm tired of like defending annotating over sort of like the puritanism of not wanting to touch the page. There's plenty of videos on that. I have also plenty of videos on that. If you want sort of like a video about why annotate, I will link my older video or some older video from somebody else on the description. And you can first watch that to convince yourself of why you should in fact annotate. Especially if we're talking about non-fiction, but also with fiction, it's very helpful. And then you can come back to this video, which is already assuming that you annotate and assuming that you have been annotating for a while and that you sort of like also underline and write and all of these things. What is the extra mile, the way in which you could improve that? And towards that, at the end of that video, he has this section on detailed annotations in which he talks about different ways, different geometrical shapes with which he identifies words or arguments or authors or mentions motifs, whatever, that allow him to identify through those shapes things on the page. And I think that video, if only he had followed that trail for like 2 more minutes, it would in fact be, in my opinion, the definitive video on annotating. Because responding to what he says at the end of the video, which is basically he's encouraging anyone to add any advice or any points that he might not have touched on or that he might not know from his English degree, I think he said. I really only can think of one thing, but I think it's a very important thing. And I think maybe he didn't mention it because he considered it obvious in the way that he was explaining the way that he annotates when it comes to detail annotations. But I think that there is a word that is very helpful when it comes to defending this way of annotating, which is language or symbols. I think that once you are annotating, once you are not just underlining, but you're interacting with the page, once you are also like writing, of course, your own summaries and reviews of the books that you read, all of those things are super important for retaining and all of these things, which I'm not saying that you have to do all the time, but definitely does improve what you take from the book and how long you can carry that book with you. The next step, and for me the final step insofar as I don't know anything more that I could do after that, is to develop your own language to annotate, to develop symbols that will allow you to like more precise symbols. I don't just mean a symbol that is contingent to the book that you are reading by, for example, taking a motif for an argument or an author or a name and just like making a shape that for that author it will be the shape that refers to him throughout. But I mean symbols that are a consistent language that you can continue to develop and expand as you read, and that is the same for all the books in your library that you have read. So I have taken the ones that I use more commonly and the ones that I think could be more useful or relatable to you. Yeah, I'll go through them and then I'll talk about the other thing. So basically, these are the symbols that I use the most. They might not make much sense to you on the page there, but let's see if I can find them here, or I wrote them. Yeah, so I wrote them here with a little explanation with a typo on the end, but that's fine. Those are all the symbols that I use for annotating. Not all the symbols, but the ones that I use more commonly. Let's go through them one by one. I cannot really like go through each of them like searching on the pages, because I don't have these amazing editing skills that so many people on this platform seems to have, where I could put the page here and just show you like, no, I'm not gonna make any editing or any cutting. So I'm just like gonna show you, you'll have to imagine it, and then you just make up your own symbols, or you can steal this from me, I don't mind. But looking at this one, this is just quotation marks, right? So the way it would look on the page is I just put it on the side. And that is the case for all of these symbols, right? And those quotation marks I always put for anything, in any book. You can always find them whenever I am reading a book that deserves them. And for me, the quotation marks means there's a sentence or a group of sentences here that is so good that I wanna like, it's a quote that I basically want to like maybe perhaps even learn by heart, but I want to go back to. So similarly, the symbol next to it, which is this, which would also be small and next to the line to which it's referring, it means it's a way of saying like there is great prose on this paragraph or on this line. It's not so much referring to how much I agree or how much I like what they are saying, but more about like I really like what they did with language here. And that's a way for me to be like, okay, you know, depending on what I'm looking for, if I'm just looking for a quote because I want to quote Dushner on some essay or whatever, I look for the quotation marks. If I am trying to learn as a writer something about how perhaps Hadrian manages to like synthesize his childhood in like 5 lines in an amazing way in which he becomes real from birth to his present, the present in which he is writing. Obviously he's not writing, Dushner is writing, but like, you know what I mean, the dramatic persona. Then I put that line, and then I'm looking for that line whenever I'm wanting to look at good prose, a good technique or whatever. Another thing, this is actually like very simple. This would be an arrow, and it would be pointing at the margin of the page. And then this is basically, I do it around a word that I don't understand, to just write a definition on the side of the page, so that I learn it, so that I learn more vocabulary or whatever. I think you should never like I mean, never, it's relative, because sometimes you don't wanna like be pulled out of the reading experience so often, and depending on what you're reading, sometimes you will get too many words that you don't understand. Definitely that happens to me, since English is not my first language and I read a lot in English, and other languages that are also not my first languages. But generally speaking, I like to, with certain words, do that, and then I just define it, or I look for the definition. I mean, I don't define a word I don't understand, obviously. But yeah, that's it. Now, this is different because when I just make a circle around a word, normally it means that that word is sort of like the theme of a whole paragraph. I don't think I will be able to find really quick here an example for that. But yeah, I'm not gonna make you look at me while I'm just searching for an example. Yeah, okay, here, for example, I made a circle around the event that is being related here, and the event is that some character is dead. So I have that, and then whenever I'm looking for that character's death, or whenever I'm like going through the book, I know, okay, that circle word is the topic of that paragraph that I have decided to sort of like underline. Since I'm already on this page, when I make a vertical line going through and around a paragraph, and it sometimes follows on the next page, it means that it's just an important passage. It's something important because I like it, important because it's relevant to the book, doesn't matter. I do it with a vertical line when it's too much to underline, but even then, if there is a part that is my favorite section of the whole paragraph, or that is perhaps the one I like the most, then I do still underline line by line that part that for me has like more relevance than the rest. And if it's a paragraph that I love, then I would, instead of like going with a line on the side, I would make a full circle around. And that means that it's like, you know, the best of the best. It's something I want to be going back to and rereading and all of that. Then I have this also that I put sometimes on the side of the paragraphs. These two arrows like that. It means what it evokes. It's a return. It means that like perhaps the character had a shoe at the beginning of the book that he was talking about for 3 lines, and I was, why the fuck is he talking about a shoe? And then at the end of the book, he talks about the shoe again. So it's for me to say, okay, this is a recurrent topic. It's a motive. It's something that is bringing me back to the beginning of the book. I think it's a good thing when writers do that, and it's good to know what it is, because you can always read into it. When instead of circling a word, I make a half rectangle around it with or maybe a full rectangle around it. It means that it's a book, author, a word, a place that I just want to be able to like find on the page to search about or something like that. When I have an exclamation, the exclamation sometimes can be a complement to anything else. The exclamation just means like really important. If I am going back to the book, it's like pay attention, or don't just skip this part. Make sure that you read this because it's really important for whatever reason. Maybe because I agree with what's being said, maybe because it's super relevant to the book. It doesn't matter. But it's just really, really, really important. It has like, it's an emphasis on whatever of the other symbols. And then I have these two, is because in every book mentions other books or other authors or other works. So this means book or author that I haven't read at all, but that I would like to. I don't do this next to every book that is mentioned, only the ones that interest me. And if it's a book or an author that is mentioned that I already know, then I do the horizontal lines. And those are some of the symbols. I think I'm gonna run out of memory, and this video is gonna stop anytime. So I just wanted to say that as a complement to his video, which I will of course link in the description and mention him and everything, and any other videos on annotating that might be of interest to you, from very basic to his video, which I consider to be sort of like the more complete one. Yeah, let me know if you have any symbols that you have, any language that you have developed in annotating. And of course, I haven't mentioned it, but for me, something that I don't think he mentioned, or at least I don't recall it, is that after doing that, and in generally when you annotate, it's not very helpful. The war against Kindles would be lost if you didn't make an index of these annotations. I'm not a big fan of posits because they tend to fall off, mainly because of that. I actually think they're very helpful, but they fall off. I put them on the page, and in the third time that I move around with the book, it's no longer there. It's not permanent. And that's why I also use pen. So create an index at the end or at the beginning of the book, with the pages where you have highlights, some keyword or something to remember, and then I also have like a nice little sort of like review or thoughts about the book at the end as well. So this is at the very end, before the more less relevant part. And that's it. Yeah, so here I have for example, you can see in this page 176 to 177, there was the topic of duty, there was some talk about poetry, and there was also a book that I would like to check out that I haven't read. That's some of the helpful things that I think you might want to add to his advice. Let me know if that was helpful. And that's me. Of course, if you haven't read this, read it. It's amazing. I have loved it. And that's me for today. Have a nice day, and I'll see you soon on the other side. Thank you, Victor.